I thought my grandfather left me nothing but memories. But 1 week after his funeral, I received a handwritten letter that changed everything. It said he left me a box, one I'd never seen, and that the key was hidden where my soul once traveled but my body never returned. That one sentence sent me from California to Africa, then across the ocean to the Caribbean. What I found on that journey didn't just reveal who he was, it made me question everything I thought I knew about our family, and myself. My name is Danielle Efua Carter. I'm 27 years old. A freelance videographer. Born and raised in California. For as long as I can remember, my world revolved around editing timelines and filming events for other people's stories. But nothing prepared me for the story I was about to walk into, one that would take me across 3 continents, and deeper into my family's past than I ever imagined. It began with a funeral. My grandfather, Kwame Carter, passed away in late March. He was 83 years old. He was a quiet man. The kind of man who smiled with his eyes more than his mouth. He lived in a modest house filled with carvings and books, but rarely spoke about his past. He would just say things like, "Your roots may sleep, Efua, but they never die. One day, they'll call you home." I never really understood what he meant. Until the day I got the letter. It came a week after the funeral. No return address. Just my name, written in his handwriting on a tan envelope. Inside was a letter, and a map. It read, "My dearest Efua. If you are reading this, then my time has come. But my journey is not yet over. There is a box, an old one, that I left behind. It is not in America. It is in Africa, hidden in the land where my story began and nearly ended. You will not find the key in one place. I left it in pieces, scattered where truth was buried. You must go to the places marked on the map. Talk to the people. Listen with your heart. When you've walked in my footsteps, the sea will guide you to the key. And Efua, be careful. You are not the only one who may be looking. Kwame Carter." Beneath the letter was a faded photo of him as a young man. He was standing beside a wooden box, carved with a strange symbol, an unbroken circle split by 3 jagged lines. I stared at it for a long time. That was the moment I knew I couldn't ignore this. 3 weeks later, I packed my gear, grabbed my passport, and boarded a flight to Ghana. I didn't know what I was chasing. But I knew it was mine to find. I arrived in Accra, Ghana on a humid Thursday night. The moment I stepped off the plane, the air hit me, warm, heavy, fragrant with something I couldn't quite name. It felt like walking into a memory that wasn't mine. I'd never been to Africa before. And yet, part of me felt like I'd returned to a place that had always been waiting for me. After customs, I stood outside Kotoka International Airport, map in one hand, suitcase in the other. The city buzzed with life. Honking cars, people laughing, the scent of grilled meat and spices wafting through the air. I flagged down a cab and handed the driver the letter from my grandfather, pointing to the address scribbled at the bottom. He glanced at it, then did a slow double take. "You know this man?" he asked in a thick, steady accent. He was my grandfather. The driver gave a soft whistle and started the car. He was quiet. Always alone. But people around here respected him. He had eyes like he'd seen things the rest of us couldn't. We drove through the lively streets of OSU until the paved road gave way to dirt and the bright city lights dimmed behind us. We pulled up in front of a weathered woodshop nestled between a corner store and a concrete wall lined with colorful murals. Hand-carved stools and wooden masks hung on rusted nails outside the shop. A small lantern flickered above the entrance. Inside, a man was working silently, shaping a piece of mahogany with a chisel. His back was bent, but his hands moved with purpose. When he heard the door creak, he looked up slowly. He studied me. "You are Efua?" I nodded. "Yes." A long pause. Then he smiled, not the wide kind, but the warm, knowing kind. "Your grandfather said you would come. He left something for you." He walked to the back of the shop and returned with a small object wrapped in dark red cloth. He placed it gently in my hand. I unwrapped it. It was a pendant, carved from what looked like ebony wood. A perfect circle split by 3 jagged lines. The same symbol from the box in the photo. "What is this?" I asked. He stared at the pendant, then at me. "Your grandfather called it the seal of truth. He wore one like it the last time I saw him. He said it would only open to blood." I wasn't sure what that meant. "He spoke in riddles," I said, half joking. The man didn't smile. "Not riddles. Warnings." I swallowed hard. "He told me I'd need to go north, that the journey started here." The old man nodded slowly. "Yes, Molly. The next piece is hidden where the sand swallows the past. But, listen to me." His tone changed, more serious now. "There are things in this world that want to stay buried. And there are people who would do anything to keep them that way. Be careful who you trust." I thanked him, tucked the pendant into my bag, and stepped back into the warm Ghanaian night. The street was quieter now, shadows stretching long beneath the street lamps. As I walked back to the car, I glanced over my shoulder. For just a moment, I thought I saw someone watching from across the street. But when I blinked, they were gone. I didn't know it then, but Ghana wasn't just the beginning of my journey. It was the moment I stopped running towards something. And started running from something, too. My second stop was Timbuktu. By the time my flight landed in Bamako, Mali, the sun was sinking low behind a thick haze. The air here was different from Ghana, drier, heavier, tinged with dust. The buildings were low and wide, colored in earthy tones that blended with the land. I had a name and a set of coordinates, both scrawled in my grandfather's handwriting on the back of the scroll I found in Ghana. No address, no phone number. Just a direction. From the airport, I hired a driver, an older woman with sharp eyes and a quiet demeanor. Her name was Amina, and when I showed her the letter and the coordinates, she gave a long look, then nodded without asking a single question. We drove for hours, leaving the noise of the city behind. Soon, we were surrounded by red earth and silence. The road narrowed until it was little more than a path. Thorny trees lined the way, and the wind carried the sound of sand scraping against metal. Eventually, we reached the edge of Timbuktu. "This is as far as I go," Amina said, pulling the car to a stop in front of an ancient mud brick mosque, its walls cracked but standing proud. "You'll find what you're looking for inside." I stepped out, unsure of what to expect. The mosque stood alone, no one else in sight. A flock of birds scattered into the sky as I approached. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Inside, it was cool, dim. Shafts of light filtered through slits in the walls, illuminating floating dust in the air. I walked slowly, listening for anything, footsteps, breathing, a sign I wasn't alone. And then I saw it. In one corner of the mosque, a section of the wall had been patched with a slightly different shade of clay. The texture was newer, fresher. It stood out just enough. I reached into my backpack for the small pick I'd brought and began scraping. Clay crumbled, falling into my hand. Beneath it was a hidden metal canister, sealed with leather strips. I sat on the floor and opened it carefully. Inside was a scroll. The parchment was brittle but intact. The writing was my grandfather's. Sharp, deliberate strokes, each word carrying weight. It read, "Forgive the silence. It kept you safe. But every silence hides a scream. Follow the river. The memory is buried in the reeds." Below that, a single line of numbers, coordinates. They pointed southeast. Botswana. As I rolled the scroll back up, I heard something. A sound. Very faint. Footsteps. I froze, holding my breath. Outside the mosque, dust stirred. I peeked through the slit in the wall and caught a glimpse of a figure, tall, still, watching from the shadow of a tree about 30 meters away. He wasn't moving. Just standing there, staring in my direction. Then, as if sensing my eyes, he stepped backward into the brush and disappeared. I gathered the scroll and hurried out. Amina was leaning against the car when I returned. She looked at me, her expression unreadable. "You saw him, didn't you?" she asked quietly. My mouth went dry. "Who was that?" She didn't answer right away. "Your grandfather used to come through here, years ago. Every time he did, someone followed. Never close. Never interfering. Just watching." "Why?" I asked. She shrugged, then looked out across the sand. "Some people don't want old stories told again." I sat in the passenger seat, heart racing. "Do you believe in curses, Amina?" She didn't look at me. "I believe in consequences." The drive back to Bamako was silent. That night, in the small guest house I had rented, I couldn't sleep. I kept the canister under my pillow, and every few minutes, I thought I heard something outside the window. Wind, maybe. Or something else. I stared at the scroll again. Follow the river. The next stop was in the heart of southern Africa, the Okavango Delta in Botswana. I pulled out the map again. The 6XS were becoming more than markers. They were pieces of a story my grandfather had scattered like breadcrumbs. And I was following them deeper and deeper into a past he had fought to hide. A past someone else clearly didn't want me to find. But I wasn't turning back. Whatever was at the end of this trail, I had to see it for myself. Even if it meant being hunted along the way. The flight to Mon, Botswana was quiet, but my thoughts were loud. I kept the scroll from Mali in my jacket pocket, the edges worn from my fingertips, tracing the words over and over: "Follow the river. The memory is buried in the reeds." I didn't know what memory he meant. But I knew I was close to something. At the edge of the Okavango Delta, a man waited with a small boat. He wore a faded hat and a sleeveless jacket, and introduced himself as Lebo. "I was told you'd come," he said. "He arranged everything years ago." My stomach tightened. "You knew my grandfather?" He didn't answer. Just motioned for me to get in. The delta was vast, a maze of green and blue. Birds skimmed the water, and the reeds whispered secrets in the wind. After hours of silence, Lebo docked the boat near a lone baobab tree standing on a small island. He pointed to the base. "There." I knelt and began digging with my hands. The soil was soft. Just beneath the surface, wrapped in oilskin, was a photograph. My grandfather, standing beside 3 tribal elders. They weren't smiling. On the back of the photo was a message. "This is where I let go of fear. Will you?" As I stood up, I heard rustling in the reeds behind me. I turned, quickly, but there was no one. Just the wind. Lebo was watching me closely now. "You're not the only one looking for what he left behind," he said. I wanted to ask who else was following me. But I didn't. Because deep down, I already knew. Someone was walking this path alongside me. But they weren't walking to remember. They were walking to stop me from finding out why. And the next stop, Tanzania, was where I'd finally begin to understand what my grandfather had truly been hiding. In the morning, I continued on to Tanzania. I arrived in Moshi, Tanzania just after dawn, the air thin and cool. The snow-capped peak of Mount Kilimanjaro loomed in the distance like a silent guardian. It looked ancient. Patient. Like it had been watching everything unfold for centuries. My grandfather had marked this place clearly on the map. No coordinates this time, just a sketch of a tree with the words, "Where my blood sleeps, the truth waits." I didn't fully understand what that meant, but I knew where to start. I hired a local hiking guide named Jabari, a quiet man with a steady voice. He didn't ask many questions when I explained what I was looking for. He just gave me a long look, nodded, and said, "Let's walk." We hiked along the lower forest trails of the mountain for nearly 3 hours. The trees grew denser, the ground damp from early rains. I clutched my pendant with every step, the weight of it grounding me. As we turned around a bend, I stopped. There it was. A solitary acacia tree, its branches twisted like reaching arms. And carved into its bark were my initials. DC. But the cuts were weathered. Old. Made long before I was born. I stepped closer, brushing my fingers over the grooves. Your grandfather came here many years ago, Jabari said from behind me. He carved those letters after staying silent for a long time. Said he was reclaiming something. Beneath the tree, I found a flat stone buried in moss. I lifted it slowly. Beneath it was a small metal box, about the size of a paperback novel. It didn't have a latch or a lock, just a hollow indent in the center. I knew immediately what to do. I pulled the pendant from around my neck and placed it into the hollow. A soft click. The lid popped open. Inside was a piece of smooth, black obsidian. Cold to the touch. The kind of black that didn't reflect light, only seemed to swallow it. There was also a note etched into the inside of the lid, written in English but in my grandfather's handwriting. Obsidian absorbs lies. Let it reflect only truth. Show it to the sea, and you will see the way. I stared down at the stone in my palm, and for a moment, it felt warm. Like it knew I was there. I stood up slowly and looked around. The mountain was quiet. Too quiet. That's when I saw it, between two trees, just beyond the clearing. A shape. Still. Watching. I couldn't make out a face, but I could feel the eyes. I turned to Jabari. Did you see that? He nodded slowly. You've been followed for a while now. Since Ghana, maybe longer. By who? He looked down the trail and said, someone who doesn't want the box opened. My pulse quickened. What's in the box, Jabari? He met my eyes. I don't know. But whatever it is, your grandfather gave up everything to keep it from the wrong hands. I gripped the obsidian tightly. It was just a stone. But it felt heavier than it should. Like it carried something inside. That night, I stayed in a guest house on the outskirts of town. I didn't sleep. I kept the pendant, the stone, and the metal box beside me. At some point, near midnight, I thought I heard whispering. Soft. In a language I didn't know. I stepped to the window, heart racing. There was no one outside. But the pendant was warm again. And the stone had shifted slightly. As if it wanted to move. The next morning, I caught a boat from the mainland to Zanzibar, the next location on my grandfather's map. But now, this didn't feel like a search anymore. It felt like a warning. Every step brought me closer to the truth. And whatever truth my grandfather had buried with such care was about to come out. At Zanzibar, the spice shop was small, tucked between stone buildings and buzzing scooters. The woman behind the counter said nothing until she saw the pendant around my neck. Then, she reached under the counter and brought out a red envelope. Your grandfather gave this to me years ago, she said. Said a woman with stormy eyes would come for it. Inside the envelope was a single parchment, handwritten. History is a mosaic. You now hold the shard that will complete it. Go to the place where words were once lost in flame, and you will find what I couldn't say. One word was written at the bottom. Alexandria. My final stop in Africa. The library in Alexandria was breathtaking. Endless rows of books. Ancient air. Secrets soaked into the walls. A man named Ferris greeted me and led me to a private archive. We've had this stored for years, he said. Left behind with no name. Only this note. He handed me a leather journal. The cover read, "The sea will remember." Inside, pressed between the pages, was one final letter. Efua. You've done what I could not. You've walked the forgotten path. You've faced what I buried. The final truth lies across the water, where I always longed to go but never dared. You must go to the sea. You'll find what I left for you where the tides kiss the bones of history. There, you'll understand. But be warned, once you see what's inside the box, you can never unsee it. Go to the Caribbean. I sat in that quiet room, heart pounding, the journal in my lap. The Caribbean? Why there? What was waiting across that ocean? And more importantly, who else knew I was coming? I closed the book. This wasn't over. Not even close.